Hi, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to join us for today's installment of the 2021 REMI Model Training Series. My name is Gaisha Blackshear, a business development analyst here at REMI, and I have the pleasure of serving as your webinar host this afternoon. Our primary speaker today will be REMI analyst May Lin. May Lin is a REMI analyst who supports several clients across the globe with their economic modeling needs. She works to ensure every user can incorporate the REMI model into their organization as effectively as possible. She has experience in economic modeling, data analysis, and programming. Ms. Lin holds a bachelor's degree in economics from Purdue University and a master's degree in statistics from Washington University in St. Louis. Following the discussion, there will be an opportunity to have your questions answered. Please feel free to submit your questions in the Q&A submission portal at any time during today's discussion. And Ms. Lin and myself will answer them following the presentation. For your convenience, all registrants from this webinar will receive direct access to the webinar slides and the recording via follow-up email. Please keep an eye out for it later this afternoon, as it will go to the same email address used to register for today's event. Without further ado, I will hand it off to May to begin the presentation.
Thank you, Gaisha, for the introduction. Before we go into the presentation, let's take a go through of all the topics we're going to see today. First, I'm going to give a overview of REMI and REMI models, and then we will introduce both PI Plus, the model, and SCI, the newly developed module. For both the model and the add-on module, we will give introduction and as well a demonstration. And now let's get started with the REMI overview. So REMI has 40 years of history of academic research and software development, and this has led to the development of the state-of-the-art model in macroeconomics research methodologies. And here are the four main components for our REMI economic modeling approach. Input-output captures industry structure and inter-industry transactions. Production of a firm increases production along the supply chain. For example, in auto vehicle manufacturing, businesses need auto part and also labor to produce. General equilibrium. So since the model adjusts to new economic activities by doing expansion until reach equilibrium, it means that if a region grows, migrants will enter the region until housing price increase and also compensation rate, employment opportunities level off. So model details are to represent specific changes, for example, effects of workforce training for nurses or doctors. And third, econometrics. REMI parameters and all the simulation results, forecast results are all determined using econometric and statistical methodology. The fourth component is economic geography. REMI analyzes impacts among regions. So not just inside one region, but among multiple regions. So if a policy change happens in Alabama, it may have a larger impact on Mississippi state than that on Washington state. These components make up the integrated REMI economic modeling approach. So how does REMI define model regions? Here we have a map for the state of Alabama. It shows all the Alabama counties. This is because the most granular unit of region that REMI can do is a county or equivalent statistical unit, or it can be, of course, a collection of counties, for example, an MSA or a state, which can cross state borders. And also we do multiple regions. We can put more than one regions in a single model, and all these can be customized by needs. Right before we go into how REMI model works, let's review the concepts of a static model versus a dynamic model. So static models are at equilibrium in a steady state, whereas dynamic models keep changing with reference to time. Dynamic model represents the behavior of the static model, and also its static components of the system. In real economy, there are a lot of dynamics, and we really need a dynamic model for forecasts and also simulations. This process chart shows how REMI dynamic model works. First, we take a default region or national baseline forecast, and we use it as the control forecast. And then we quantify and input a policy change, say X, run the simulation. So then we can get an alternative forecast. And finally, we just put those two forecasts together, and then we are able to compare the differences. REMI can forecast economy going out into the year of 2060, which enables us to do not only short-term, but also long-term analysis. So as the first training session of the series, we're going to introduce PI+. PI+ is our flagship model. It allows users to understand the relationship between a policy and its economic foundation. To go through the 5 blocks, please follow me with an example of the general economic growth. So when demands for a product or a service increases, companies increase their output to meet the increased demand. And companies do this by investing more money and also hiring more workers. More workers start a cycle all over again, with there being even more money spent on the economy, increasing demand further. In block 1, output and demand, we have output equals to consumption plus investment plus government spending plus net trade, where net trade equals to exports minus imports. In the second block, we have labor and capital demand. In block 3, population and labor supply. This enables us to tell if people move into or move out of an area, and if they enter or leave the labor force. Block 4, compensation, prices, costs. This shows living standards. It also answers questions like, are people getting compensated better or worse? And can residents afford a place to live? Block 5 is the market share. It shows exports, imports to both the rest of US and the rest of the world. And third, a thing very important is the self-supply to the region itself. After the overview, we will now have a PI+ model demonstration. We're using a PI+ model with a single region, which is Alabama State. This is the version 2.5, which is the most up-to-date version. We will do a case study and impact study of new auto manufacturing businesses started in the state of Alabama. We will increase 1,000 jobs in this industry of motor vehicles, bodies and trailers, and parts manufacturing. Inside the model, we will first look at the PI plus model linkages again with the new story we just introduced, and then we will look at some key results using the analytical tools inside the model. Here I'm sharing the home screen of a PI plus model. Here we can see some very useful tiles, and now we're using new regional simulation tile to start our new simulation for the policy change or the economic change. In REMI models, we have a full list of policy variables having nearly 100 choices that you can choose from. However, a much easier way to start the simulation is to search inside the search box with employment, which we're the most interested in. Select the policy variable, select in industry exogenous production. We're doing it because we're assuming that this business newly started in Alabama is not crowding any current business out directly, it's not replacing anything, and it's coming outside the state. For industry under manufacturing, we select motor vehicles manufacturing, and the region here is already selected for us because this is a single region model. We use unit as our unit. Although REMI can do analysis out there for the year of 2060, we will do only year 2022 to 2040 to just save some time. We input 1,000 to each of the years. We can also edit a name to be employment. After adding this policy variable into the input list, we can check it here. If we have multiple policy variable, we can check all of them here. After checking, we can go to forecast options and run the forecast. Again, we're looking at the model linkages. You could notice that there are more details in a real model. Here's where we started. In block to labor and capital demand, we increased the employment in a certain industry. And as expected, because there are more employment, it increases the employment opportunity. It means that it's going to be easier, or there's more choices for people who are looking for a job. And this, on the other hand, means that a company needs to pay more to hire an ideal candidate. So employment opportunity goes up, compensation rate goes up, and this means that Alabama state is becoming more attractive to people outside state. So from here, we will see migration from block 3 population and labor supply. We will see migration increasing, especially economic migration. People are moving into the state for a better job, and that will increase population as well. And population as well as demand GDP growth will further lead to an increase in government spending, consumption, and these two indicators will further impact output, and output to employment, the opposite impact will make this a full circle. There are more than one circle in the model, and we can figure them out one by one by looking at the key results in analytical graphs. In final demand components, let's focus on consumption, investment, and government spending. So as we just discussed, consumption will go up in Alabama state, and of course, investment will grow for demand for buildings, equipments, as well as housing and residential capital stock. As a result of those two indicators, the government spending went up too. And to look further into the state and local government spending, we can see that the GDP is growing as well. Therefore, Alabama attracts population moving into this area. And of course, the state and local government goes up. For labor and capital demand, if we look at capital stock, I would like to show you two key results, which are residential actual capital stock and residential multiple optimal capital stock. So because there are more people and more income in Alabama, of course there are gonna be more residential capital, or we usually say housing structures. This is because migrants need homes and current residents may want to buy new houses. And the residential optimal capital stock means that the amount of capital required to satisfy the current housing demand, it's also increasing. And we could see that especially in the first years, there are a lot of room for investment in housing and residential capital. The third sector is the population and labor supply. Here, the bolded red line represents the net economic migrants. We're looking at the differences from the baseline forecast to the simulation forecast. Therefore, the area here or the numbers here represents only the increase itself for each year. That means we have economic migrants moving into Alabama every year. Though it slows down a little bit in the long term, that is because we're getting closer and closer to an equilibrium. But still, if we look at the cumulative indicator, population is increasing over years. And of course, it slows down a little bit. And this can further show how dynamic models are important, because static shows no move of people, and in reality, people do move, but it takes time, as it shows. In the fourth sector, there are compensation, prices, and costs. This is all about supply and demand, because new businesses means increase in demand of labor. So here, the yellow line represents people moving into Alabama, and they are also working in this area. So it's called residence adjust employment. People both live in and work in this area. And then higher wages and more job opportunities will lead a growth in labor force as well. People are compensated better. So of course, more people want job, and also employees from other state will enter the state. The final sector, market shares, shows import, export, but more importantly, we will look at self-supply. It means if the region, Alabama state itself, can't meet the needs from the state itself. So, of course, as discussed, increase in demand and also domestic demand. We can tell that Alabama is actually doing great in self-supplying. This yellow line here represents the regional purchase coefficient, which means that the locally self-supplied proportion decreased a little bit. But that just means people are like comparably more depending on the purchases from outside Alabama. Besides the analytical graphs, another very interesting table we usually look at is employment by industry. By clicking at the year, we can sort the numbers, which is the differences between the baseline and the simulation by its magnitude. So there's no surprise to see motor vehicles, bodies, and trailers to be at the top. And then the second industry coming along is construction. It's pretty natural because companies will invest in factory building, housing building, and also people invest in residential capital as well. The third industry is retail trade. This is because this industry is very labor intensive. It's not like nursing, because to be a nurse you need to take years of training. But for retail trade, it's much easier to be impacted by labor force. So that's the whole story of PI Plus analysis for Alabama new businesses. The next chapter will be further analysis using the newly developed module SCI. First, let's see what SCI is and why we should use SCI. REMI SCI is the premium modeling solution for evaluating the socio-economic indicators of projects, programs, and policy changes. Public policy should serve the interests of the public, not just some certain groups of people. In order to ensure that policy effects are broad-based, we need to evaluate how different social and demographic groups are affected by policies. And required to do so we are required to do so by federal, state, and local regulations. And also, American demography is changing. Building a diverse workforce is imperative for future economic development and growth. In REMI SCI, there are 9 main components or features. They are compensation distribution, employment changes by earning quintiles, consumption price by earning quintile and range, inequality coefficient, employment by race and gender, employment by educational attainment, labor force participation by race and gender, unemployment, and also per capita income. In the module demonstration, we will focus on these 4 components: the compensation distribution along with its inequality coefficient, and employment by both race and gender, and educational attainment. In the left bars, we can notice a socio-economic indicators right below the key results. First thing we would like to see is the weighted compensation rate. Here, the comparison type is percentage change, so we can see how fast we're how fast for each income group the increase is. If we zoom in a little bit, we can notice that for nearly every year, the middle 20%, the group of the middle 20%, which indicates the middle class, makes the biggest change in percentage. And also, another very outstanding bar is the highest 20%. This means that first, we're helping improve the benefits for the middle class, and also the highest 20%, the people that are earning the most, is always receiving the most benefits. If we look at the inequality coefficient, we will notice a negative change. This is actually a good thing because it is a negative change in inequality, and that means we helped improve equality in this in the economy in Alabama. The third result would be employment by race and gender. Here we can change gender to total, so we are looking at both genders and focusing on just the racial groups. REMI has 4 racial groups. Currently, they are white, non-Hispanic, black, non-Hispanic, other non-Hispanic, and Hispanic. If we change the comparison type to percentage change, we can see that for all the racial groups, there is a change, a positive change in employment, both in the short term and the long term. However, the white non-Hispanic group is slightly winning this race by leading the increase in percentage change. The last indicator we will show in the SCI module is the employment by education. We have detailed education groups of 7 different education groups, from less than high school diploma to doctoral or professional degree. Usually, we're more interested in the aggregated groups, which are no bachelor's degree group and bachelor's degree and above group. Before looking at the changes, we can have a basic idea of how it should be or how it was in the baseline forecast. In the baseline forecast in the year of 2022 for all occupations, 68.3% of the jobs are for people without a bachelor's degree. And now we can look at the differences between our simulation or alternative forecast to the baseline forecast. In the differences, in the increase in jobs, we see that the proportion or percentage of the no bachelor's degree job is 76.5%. This means that we're benefiting people without a bachelor's degree, and this further proves our belief in that equality has been improved. So in this case, there is a newly started auto manufacturing business in Alabama. Companies are investing more and hiring more workers, increasing demand. When demand for a product or service increases, companies increase their output to meet the increased demand. So during the process, we could expect better employment opportunity, higher compensation rate, and also we can expect like better equality in the social economy as well. So thank you for going through with me, going through the demo and also the introductions with both model and module with me. I will give it back to Gaisha for our conclusion, and we will start the Q&A session soon.
Thank you, May, for a great presentation. As I stated in my welcome, you can submit your questions via the Q&A submission portal located on your screen, and I will address them in order that they were submitted. In addition to this, for your convenience, more information about the economic modeling solutions and practices discussed today can be found in the handouts section of the webinar platform. In addition, the slides and recordings of today's presentation will be made available via follow-up email and on our website later today. At this time, I will jump into the first question.